Welcome to the Husky Hockey Podcast, your number one podcast for your post-Thanksgiving coma. I hope everybody had an incredibly wonderful time enjoying the Huskies week off at least. Maybe saw a little bit of other college hockey action around the nation, but I sat at home, did a lot of domestic, put up the Christmas tree, put up Christmas lights. I had a brunch at Coyote Moon and with the in-laws, and then also welcomed a new nephew, Felix. Just joined us in the world here on Saturday. So yeah, I'm on cloud nine. You know, a new family member and just a ton of food. I'm happy.
Yes, congratulations to the Felix family.
Yeah, thank you. So Weldie here, sitting with Andrew, talking Huskies hockey. We're going to go over a little bit about a recap about what happened in college hockey last week, as we kind of pertain to a little bit of the women's side as well. We'll talk a little bit, as Andrew, you said you were able to watch the women's game.
Yep, on Saturday. Yep,
on Saturday. Yep, as they were to come across come out with a sweep on the road at RPI.
Correct. It's my first time watching them this year. Tough for me to comment on the women's team if I haven't actually watched them play. So it was nice to get some video and watch them on Saturday. And I don't think RPI is, in college the women's side is still so top heavy. I don't think RPI is necessarily very good. And in the Huskies conference, still sort of dominated by the same old Minnesota, Wisconsin. Now this year, Ohio State is kind of the third team that's seriously competing in that conference.
You got to give a little bit of credit to Minnesota Duluth.
And Duluth's always there, and Bemidji has had some good years in the past. I think they're a little bit down this year, but so it's still going to be tough sledding for the Huskies in the WCHA, but it was nice to see them take care of an opponent that I think they were better than. It's nice to see that they have a Finnish connection as well. I think her first name is Janina Nyland. Had a hat trick on Saturday, and I thought the third goal was an empty netter, but the first two were I thought impressive shots. She's got a nice little snipe in her game, and they seem to run. They don't have. I'm not sure if it's because this Emma Gentry also is a pretty impressive player for them, and she had a couple of goals on Friday. I wasn't able to see that game, but they do play on the same line occasionally. I don't think it's all the time, or it could just be the power play that they share time on, but. Seems like that's where the majority of their offense is coming from. Are those two players, and it was like I said, I enjoyed watching the game, and enjoyed the women's teams always had a little bit different jerseys. So they had the C, but it was very much like the men's black road jerseys, except instead of the black, it was all red. Mm-hmm. And I thought that's a pretty good look.
I absolutely love the women's jerseys. I would buy a game worn women's jersey in a heartbeat and wear that probably to every home game. Yeah. I just think they look so nice. I wish the men would have that style and have that jersey as well.
Yep. So even though the men's team was idle this weekend, women took care of business out east, and so. Good to see that, and good to catch a game. Not in person, obviously, but streaming wise. So, go Huskies, woo!
Yeah, exactly. I was able to watch them. They swept Lindenwood as the first series, so I watched a little bit of the squad, and it, and I even tweeted out too. I was like, they're going to surprise some teams. I think they do have quite a bit of talent, and obviously, with Lucy there in net, I mean, she's just a top tier goalie, and she is, I think, really able to kind of steal the game. I think what's really tough for women's college hockey in general is just I it's an old Herb Brooks ism, I guess you could say, is that you widen the base, then you widen the summit. So how Herb Brooks, kind of came up, and why he wanted to expand college hockey, Division One to St. Cloud when everyone thought he was nuts, was because he wanted more opportunities for Minnesota high schoolers to play at the next level. So you widen the base, and you're able to build it up, and then it's just more traction that you get in the pros. And I think women's hockey is kind of stuck here because they don't have the underlying support I don't see from the schools beneath, that kind of treat women's athletics in general as kind of a toss away or whatnot. It's tough because I feel like, women's college hockey is always going to be behind that eight ball because you do have kind of the blue bloods of college hockey that are going to get some of the best recruits because they've got that pass and they've got that history and whatnot. So it's going to be, until they get a little bit more support from school districts and whatnot at the lower level, I think, it's going to be a little bit tough for women's college hockey to get to a place where it's a little bit more competitive, where you have more than, 3 or 4 teams that are just going to dominate.
Yeah, they haven't reached the parity yet. I mean, think of it as like the men's game was 30, 40 years ago, where it really was the traditional powers and then everybody else. Whereas nowadays in the men's game, I mean, St. Cloud State is a elite program, and Quinnipiac, and just think of the kind of schools that they're hockey only schools that now are in the conversation when it comes to the best programs in the country. It's still going to take the women's game a while to get to that level, but still there is a fair amount of randomness. I mean, Clarkson has won a national title in the last few years, and they're off to another great start. It's like Mercyhurst, I know, has had a traditionally very good program, and their men's program is pretty nondescript. So it's like, and I think out east, especially, there's some more. There's maybe not so much parity, but because I think the Western schools still dominate from a national title standpoint. But at least out east, there are some more just random schools that have found success. So I wouldn't put. I'd say St. Cloud has that opportunity, and they're in a good spot geographically from a recruiting standpoint that it can happen. And maybe they don't have the facilities that the Gophers and Duluth and Wisconsin and those schools have, but I think that it's not going to shock me to see them, field a not just a competitive team, but a team that can go to the tournament. And so,
which was recently expanded.
It was. I know that.
Oh, yep, it was expanded to 11 teams. And the reason why 11 is because just strictly percentage, because it's the same percentage of teams that make as the men's side.
So is the number one overall seed going to get a bye?
I think that's
they're probably there's going to have to be a couple of buys involved. Yeah. Probably just weird why they wouldn't make it 12.
Just make it 12.
It would make it so much easier from a bracket standpoint, but no, that's good. I know that has been a rally cry to get some more teams in the tournament, and so that's always a good thing.
Transferring over to the men's side, the week in review, we talked a little bit about really the one major game that we had on the docket that had both of our intention would be that Minnesota St. Cloud, that Minnesota North Dakota game. That took place up at the Ralph, ended up in a split, which is fairly, I would say, predictable. I was not able to watch as much as the game as I wanted to. You were able to watch a little bit more. How was everything? How was the atmosphere? How were the games? What were your kind of takeaways?
Yeah, I thought there were two good games. The Gophers played very well on Friday, I thought. The score was, I think, 5-1, but there was an empty netter It was basically 3-1. They had an empty netter, and then they actually scored another goal when they put Driscoll back in. So I don't think it was really indicative of a 5-1 game. Closer than that. And then on Saturday, I thought North Dakota played very well. Even through, into the third period, the Gophers were still under 10 shots total. So they took a while for them to wake up, and they did make it a game at the end. Scored a couple of goals in the third to make it 3-2. But then North Dakota hung on and was able to salvage the split. Didn't realize how North Dakota has traditionally laid an egg on Thanksgiving weekend, going back even close to a decade, into the Hackstall era. They've typically played a series on, Friday and Saturday after Thanksgiving, and a lot of times I think they've only won one series. They swept one series in that time period. And that was against the Gophers a couple years ago. If you remember I actually think they played on Thanksgiving. I think it was a Thursday, Friday, and they beat them like 9-3 in one of those games. I think it was Motzko's first year, maybe his second year. I think that's the only time that they've had a winning, a sweep on this weekend series. And they lost to St. Lawrence one of those years. They lost to Bad Michigan State one of those years. So it's kind of been a letdown weekend for them traditionally. But for them to get a split against a pretty good Gopher team that's kind of been in Splitsville for the last, month or so plus. And they've been playing a tough schedule, give them that. But I was kind of, after the Huskies played the Gophers, haven't been overly thrilled with the way the Gophers have played since then. And so I thought that both teams played pretty well this weekend, and I thought the split was the most logical outcome. And so, yeah, it's a good series as far as it's the atmosphere that I could tell just watching it on TV. It seemed not like the classic days. I mean, something has been lost between that rivalry with the new conference. But, there's still plenty of hatred. They must be doing some 20-year thing about the Ralph, the North Dakota broadcast, because in the intermission they've been doing this thing where it's like memories of the Ralph. So they did like that Pagansky game-winning penalty shot thing from a couple years ago. Well, then this weekend, at least the Saturday game, the memory of the Ralph was when the Gophers lost to Holy Cross. And it's just like, you can't even, in North Dakota, you can't even pick a game that you guys played in, but it's kind of one of those things like when, the best game for the Vikings, one of the best games in Vikings history is when the Packers lost to the Seahawks. It's kind of had that sort of feeling where it's like, all you're there for is to rub the salt in the wounds there.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. But, the amazing thing about that, and, I've got a little bit of, I guess, of a different view on it. I look at that game as a turning point for college hockey, because that was the game that, kind of, at the time it was like, oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. But then I think every year since then, or almost every year since then, a 4 has taken out a 1.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's just commonplace. And
that
sure,
was the first time
it has a little bit to do with it, but
that was the first time that a 4 had beaten a 1. And what I think is forgotten a little bit is the Gophers were not the number 1 overall seed that year. They were the number 2 overall seed. Holy Cross was in the 20s in pairwise. So just looking from a pairwise perspective, the Huskies' loss to Ferris F and State was more of a embarrassment. So people kind of think that this, because they had this is back when, what was was it the CHA? The conference that Bemidji was in. It's like a 6-team division. So they still had that and Atlantic Hockey, and they both got automatic berths. So you would have 2 of those kind of teams, heavy underdogs. They would still have, so 2 of those teams would make the tournament in those days. And so I think that a lot of people think that the Gophers were the number 1 overall seed that year, but they weren't. So it's, but yeah, as you're correct, because I think it's something like every year except one or two, there's been a 4 seed beating a 1 seed in the tournament, and so yeah, that was. We're talking about parity in the women's game. That was, as you said, an important turning point as far as seeing how much the parity had spread in the men's game. Whereas nowadays,
and it only took like 50 some years,
something like that.
Before,
give or take.
So, yeah.
And of course, they had to play the famous Holy Cross student broadcast clip of the game-winning goal, which K-Fan still plays about 3 times a day. So that's always classic.
I'm happy you brought up a little bit about, the atmosphere and whatnot. I remember a time when that was just appointment viewing for me. Like, I didn't care who won. I just knew it was just going to be, a hatred-filled battle. And I just feel it's just lost its luster. It doesn't feel appointment viewing to me anymore. And I just think, the conference reshuffling, I saw so many people talk about how it's the best rivalry in college hockey. And I'm like, well, it definitely hasn't been for the last 10 years. I don't think.
Yeah, I think I think it would have mellowed even if the conferences hadn't split. I think there just would have been a natural sort of mellowing of it. But the conference split is a big part of it. I mean, just think of all the Final 5 games between those teams, or even NCAA tournament games. And you haven't had the only games that they've played since the conference split have been these sort of non-conference Thanksgiving weekend, or they played the Vegas game a couple of years ago. But generally early season games, which they all count the same in the formula, in the pairwise. But let's face it, it's not the same sort of stakes as winning the conference tournament or something like that. So that's where I think the tough part is, as far as that really sort of put a big dent into that rivalry. And I wonder if you talk to North Dakota fans now, and especially maybe younger ones that don't have as much history going back to the 90s, or let's say, when they have personal experiences with the Gophers. I wonder if current North Dakota students, like, who would they say would the biggest rivalry be right now? Because I think there's a pretty strong one that's continued throughout this new conference with Denver. Obviously, you had long rivalry with them before that, but then St. Cloud was their WCHA travel partner for 10, 15 years. And so they've been playing St. Cloud twice a year for 20 years now. And they have sort of been I think they've won the majority of the Penroses between those two. So they're always playing important games. And then you got Duluth as well. Once they win a couple of national titles, that elevates that rivalry as well. And you're playing these teams in the playoffs, and you're playing these teams with lots of stuff to win and lots to lose. So would they really say that the Gophers are even at the top of their rivalry list right now? I'm not sure. So
and you make a good point too. Is because polling like the students or whatnot, it's like, yeah, they could hear stories about how great whatever rivalry was, but eventually it's just going to come off as, okay, boomer. That doesn't really matter because they're not in our conference. We're chasing trophies with these people, not not Minnesota anymore. So it's that's always what I like to say when Gopher fans will bring up talking about how everybody wants to play for the U of M, or it's every childhood's dream to do that. And it was like, Yeah, maybe it was in the 70s, or maybe it was even in the early 90s. But your recruits that are coming up now remember when there were four solid options for college hockey in the state of Minnesota alone, and obviously very close is a couple more. So it's always just kind of nice to remember that, yeah, your recruits are 16, 17 years old. What do they remember? It's a lot easier to catch all of the games. Your one team isn't on MSC anymore and all across the state, and that's it. There's just so many more options. So that's that's kind of where I'd like to say is, I'm always trying to press forward. Where are we going? Where are we developing? Because we can wax nostalgia all we want and whatnot, but in the end, it's the drive of what's coming up next is going to get more butts in the seats for the series that are coming up.
Yeah, just like you said, a 16-year-old recruit. The last time that the Gophers and North Dakota were in the same division, they would have been 8 years old. So I can't imagine that there's a ton of concrete.
They're not going to talk about
memories.
the timeout game. They're not going to talk about Wheeler's diving goal.
They're not going to talk about the handshake line fight.
Yes.
They weren't alive then, probably. So
I saw that game. I was actually down at Tom Reed's pub, and I was chatting up two girls that were at the bar and talking to them. They were North Dakota fans, and they were just so upset because they were supposed to go to that game, but the tickets they had from the other guys fell through. So I was just talking to them all night and just kind of BSing with them. And then, the game was over. And then all of a sudden, yeah, there was.
Why were you down at Tom Reed's?
No clue. I don't know why.
You just know you go where the action is.
Yeah. We can kind of dovetail that into our series coming up with North Dakota. And, we had a week off. We had. Something that I found really interesting was Hench's questionable for the series. Larson was talking to Mick Hatton on the Rink Live and pretty much said that he's going to be 100%, he's going to go for Bemidji. But this week it's questionable. So I would imagine he's going to be out. But he said a little bit of interesting comments also about, his choice on Brodzinski and Bushy sitting. So I'll go ahead and play a quick clip of that right now.
I don't know if I want to go quite that far, but it was an interesting move on your part. Brendan Bushy and Easton Brodzinski were they both a little bit banged up, or was that just a coach's decision on your part?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both with that, and there was some, a little bit of, I can say this, a little bit of both. You look into those injuries and just how some guys are trending and things. I don't want to give too much away there, Mick, but a little bit of both came into those decisions.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes, and I'm speaking as a youth coach, I mean, sometimes you have to kind of set a tone, and it doesn't matter who it is, right? I mean, sometimes you got to take a guy that, even if he's played 130, 140 games in your, in your program and say, listen, we need you to be better than that.
Yep. As a coach, you have to hold everybody accountable. You can't just hold some people accountable. And sometimes that comes down to some of your guys that have played a lot for you. And some of those decisions are big picture decisions. They may or may not help you right in the moment. But as much as we're trying to beat Western Michigan that night, we're also trying to build the right culture that'll last and sustain through a second half push, obviously, and help this group keep getting better. And sometimes some accountability things, some messages to push guys maybe a little bit out of their comfort zone, things like that. Sometimes health related for sure, and like I said, a lot of those things came into this, but you've got to do those big picture things that you hope is going to put your team on the right path in the second half of the year.
Yeah. I don't know what you have to take. I don't know what your take is on that. To me, that sounds like a benching. He kind of said, yeah, a little bit of illness, a little bit of that. But, and when he brought up being accountable and accountability, that seems to me that it was a benching for Brodzinski. I guess that's a bold strategy. He was really talking big picture, but when you've had such little success in Lawson, maybe you're just waving the flag, switching up, putting the lines in a blender, seeing what happens. I don't know. I thought, if you're struggling to score that much 5-on-5, benching your top goal or one of your top goal scorers is an interesting move. I'll say that.
Yeah, I agree. I think last week I was clear that I thought the coaching changes on Saturday were head scratching. I'm not against. He knows the locker room better than I do, obviously. And if he thinks this can light a fire, I mean, I see the reasoning for it. Just felt like a weird timing for it, and you can say maybe it was the perfect timing for it because they just got worked on Friday and wanted to change something. And I don't mind either the fact of I like the idea that nobody is above being benched or held accountable in his language. I mean, we've seen this with Jay Cox pretty much all year, and we've talked about him being an alternate captain on the team, and he's been benched more often than he's played this year. And the same with Bushy. I'm not sure if this sort of benching thing, if that applied to Bushy. He didn't play great on Friday, but right. He wasn't the reason that they lost, I don't think. I felt it was a weird time to do that. You might, but he's the coach. It seems like it's one of those inside the locker room sort of dynamics that me, schmo, sitting a few time zones away, don't really feel qualified to really hammer him for it.
That's why we have the podcast. That's the whole point of what we're doing here, Andrew, is just second guess everything and pretend we know a lot more than anybody else.
Well, that's true.
Because we're on the internet.
That is true. What do you do? Get your head out of your ass, Larson. Come on.
You go.
Come on, man.
Where's the hot take button? So I mean, it'll be fun to see how he reacts to that. So it's him coming back against North Dakota, slipping against Western Michigan. I think this is a series here where we just need to kind of make a stand, so to speak. We've got the long break coming up. Lay it all on the weekend. North Dakota just coming off an emotional series. It's gonna be fun to watch, and Driscoll coming back. I'm interested to see how that works. There's a lot of storylines here that we can kind of get into and whatnot. So, kind of, what are you looking forward to seeing out of the Huskies this weekend?
Yeah, it's always an event when North Dakota plays in St. Cloud. Yeah, I know. I expect good hockey. I expect the Huskies to play better than I sure hope they play better than they did in Kalamazoo. I think getting up for a rival in North Dakota will help in that effort. Hopefully the rest here will help the guys that have been struggling with some injuries. It'd be great to see Henches. Not sure what the percentage of that happening, and even part of me thinks, after this week, he got 3 weeks off then until Bemidji. Maybe hold him out. Maybe hold him out until then might be.
That's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of where I'm thinking is just hold him off. Like I said earlier too, what I said last week when we were talking about like our panic rankings and where we're at. And I said that I'm kind of sitting here at a 4, and looking big picture. Yeah, make sure that he's healthy for when it really matters, and give him a couple extra weeks off, really heal whatever is ailing him. For him to get injured again, probably in 3 weeks, because that's kind of what his career has been lately.
Yeah, try to get him going at put him on the ice when he's 100%. Mm-hmm. If he's 80% this weekend, I would sit him out. I would keep him out. If it's the second half of the year, if it's 3 weeks to go in the regular season, I think it's a little bit differently. But you have enough time here where, and you're right on the edge of an extended holiday break. I wouldn't mind just being extra cautious in this regard. I'm glad you brought up the the panic meter that we talked about last week, because I want to kind of clarify that as far as I put it at 5 right in the middle. And I will say that I think I am confident. I would be willing to put some money on the fact that I think the Huskies are going to make the NCAA tournament. So couch my rating of 5 on the panic meter in those terms, at least. I mean, it might be reasonable to think, well, if I'm halfway panicked that this whole season is going to go to crap, I still think that there's enough on this team that is going to get you into the tournament. My sort of panic meter is I'm less and less convinced that this team can make a deep run in the tournament. And a weekend like this is going to do a lot to move that panic meter level. At some point, a split would be fine this weekend. Certainly would be better than getting swept, Captain Obvious. But at some point, I mean, they played 3 series so far in conference and haven't had a 6-point weekend. You kind of need to start picking up the points here. And tough task to do that against North Dakota wherever you play them and whenever you play them. But I'm kind of looking for a bit of a statement from this team, and I'm not going to be so bold as to predict that this weekend, especially coming off of the Lawson performance. But this team needs to step it up and show me something here, and just show me if they can if they are going to be a deep run team when come tournament time. Or if this is going to be a team that's more going to like struggle to have a home ice playoff series in conference. I feel like and I think this conference will get 5 teams at least into the tournament. So you don't even need to be one of those teams. But just like I said, big picture and how far this team can go this year, that's really where that panic meter is trying to capture, because I'm still unsure of what of how deep of a run this team can make. But so it's a big opportunity this weekend. The good thing about the conference is you have these opportunities against the elite teams to quickly make up some ground and to forget about clunkers in the past. This isn't like the CCHA where, there's not the opportunities to make up pairwise points are limited. You got Dakota, you got a couple of series against Duluth, you got a Denver series coming up. So you're going to get these opportunities to make some hay, and that's good, but even better would be to convert on these opportunities. So,
and you brought up a really good point about, the NCHC probably getting 5 teams in anyway, and, once you make the tournament, anything can happen. So it's, even getting swept at Western Michigan, I saw just so many tweets about how, burn it down, like everything's going to hell and everything along those lines. Like, God, we have been way too accustomed to being, kind of, one of the top programs in the country. If getting swept at, again, a respectable team and in their barn, it's, we just have to look at it as some kind of perspective, with the perspective of this being in the big picture, that we do have a lot of teams. We do play a tough schedule with a lot of against a lot of top teams, and we, in the end, that's not going to hurt us a ton, and all those wins are going to be really big bonuses, especially when Hockey East is as bad as they are, and we've got that opportunity to get 5 or 6 in, and so. I'm really interested to see how this team is going to bounce back. And, I would imagine Larson's going to go back to the lineup that we're a little bit more familiar with. And, just, kind of seeing how the Huskies are going to take a little bit of control, for some of the forwards here with Gaber and Calder and whatnot for North Dakota that have been having such a strong season. And, we've raved about our defense, and they're going to have, kind of their work cut out for them. and so that's going to be that's going to be kind of the matchup I'm watching the most is how our defense kind of plays up against some of their top forwards, and then also Sanderson kind of when he takes over a game, he's such a smooth skater and such a powerful dynamic player. So I'm worried. I'm worried how the Huskies are going to contain him, and that's. I think if he kind of imposes his will on the Huskies, I think it's just going to be a long weekend for St. Cloud.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching him. He's got to be an early Hobie candidate. Good field this year with all the Michigan guys and whatnot, but he's going to be in the conversation, I think, at the end of the year for the Hobie. I don't think they're. I mean, they were fairly active on the transfer wire in the offseason. This Calder that you mentioned is a Lake State transfer. Connor Ford was a Bowling Green transfer, and these are two of their top 4 scorers at this point. And so I'm not sure about the depth of scoring being all that great for North Dakota, and Sanderson's their top scorer, and he's obviously from on the point. So I think that the Huskies, when things are going well for the Huskies, and they didn't go so well the last time they played, but I think they can match up fairly well with their offense. And Driscoll's been good, not great. Save percentage is under 900 right now. I think he's a better goalie than that. Just maybe getting accustomed to the higher level of play in the NCHC, perhaps. And again, they've played a tough schedule as well. So, and he's going to be motivated to play one of his former teams. So, I think the Huskies match up fairly well with North Dakota, but I mean, especially in a rivalry situation like this, he can kind of throw records and stats out the window, and it's going to be a lot of, it's going to be a physical game and lots of emotion on the ice. I'm looking forward to some good hockey. I really hope the Huskies step up their performance and give one of their best efforts of the year. I think they have the motivation, not only from the Western Series, but but disappointing end to the Omaha Series. It's been a while since this team has looked dazzling on home ice. Mm-hmm. So maybe maybe this is the opportunity for them to step it up and prove a sort of on the fence kind of 5 out of 10 panic button rating. Give us a chance to be reassured, I guess.
Yeah, ease off a little bit on it. I like that you mentioned their depth. How I feel like North Dakota has in history kind of been one of those top heavy teams where they kind of run one plus line, maybe 2 lines. And, now it might be a little bit of the case, but I think they do have a lot more depth storing that's spread out. That can be a little bit concerning to a lot of other teams that hopefully isn't as concerning to the Huskies because our defense and our depth and our defense have been so good so far this year. But, if the Huskies lose, 3-2, 4-2, something along those lines, and it wouldn't surprise me if the score sheet just says, goal scorers are Constantini, Sendin, Caulfield, and Hain. Those are people that, they're not going to grab a ton of the headlines, and they're not, they're stalwart players, but they've got a lot of spread out, depth that can be a little bit worrisome. And if the Huskies are able to shut down that top line, but it's their depth that kind of burns us, I can see that happening. But I hope, and I would imagine that the depth in our defense is definitely going to help with that as well. and we'll be able to neutralize that. That's what kind of makes this matchup so interesting to me. And if Rennick can stay how Rennick has played, it's going to be a tight 2 games.
Yeah, and as we've said, wondering what the lines are going to look like for St. Cloud, and I'm less, that fourth line for the Huskies is more of a utilitarian. I don't think they're going to give them a ton of offense, but when things are going well, you're getting solid contributions from those top 3 lines.
Yeah,
and however you jumble them up, Fitzgerald, Miller. You got the Finns, Brodzinski, Walker, and whatnot. They can all be sort of the top line. Doesn't really matter numbering them or ranking them. I'd put those 3 lines up against North Dakota's. Problem is, the second Western game, we didn't have those pairings really in place at all, and it resulted in a shutout loss. So we'll see if Larson decides to go back to what was working earlier in the year.
And I swear to God, if we go back to that half-ward power play one-timer, miss the net, I'm just going to go fetal and cry. Just end it. Just give me sweet release at that point.
We need to bring the grease pan a little bit this weekend.
Right. Buzzword.
I am Buzzword Bobby. But it would help. Yeah, I'd rather see some just disgusting goals rather than the Robbie Jackson special, which I've coined that phrase. So yeah, you're not going to the games or any of the games this weekend, are you?
This weekend probably not. With a 4-year-old and twins. That are 1.5. It's tough to go to any games, and going to North Dakota going to a game against North Dakota is maybe a little.
It's not the most G-rated
yeah
opportunity to bring the family to the ballpark, as they say.
Yep, exactly. So, maybe go with some of my old college buddies, but I've got no plans to at the moment. So we'll see how everything goes. We'll see how the weekend goes, and hopefully we're going to get a good showing from the Huskies. So before we wrap, anything else? I got one question for you, and but not hockey related. So if you want to go back to anything hockey related, anything more you want to touch on, or any of your Jerry Springer final thoughts?
I did. I was surprised to see the Dryden McKay. Now he broke the shutout record, all-time NCAA shutout record a couple of weeks ago.
Men's.
Men's. He passed Ryan Miller, 25 or so shutouts career. Mm-hmm. But he got another one. He added to his record this weekend. But did you see Lake State put 5 shots total?
I thought that was a typo. I thought that was the typo when I looked at it.
I had to look. I had to verify that as well because I thought it was a typo. I think both teams were sort of a flu bug / COVID kind of riddled. So I don't think they were putting their best. And Mankato lost a 1-0 game on Friday. Not a good result for them, obviously. But I don't think they were playing at full strength, either team. But yeah, and I mean the shutout record is a good one, and I'm not going to take too much away from it. But there's got to be I want to go back to see how many of those shutouts were less than 10 shots, because I know there was a couple of those, like with Huntsville and Anchorage, that were not as low as 5 shots. I've never seen. You
want to put an asterisk on Dryden McKay's legacy?
Not an asterisk. Yeah. I'm putting context to it. I would be confident to think that the Ryan Miller shutouts were a little bit more impressive against more impressive competition than the Dryden McKay streak. But
you think they were?
I mean, it was a more offensive era, I think, back then. I mean, I guess the CCHA had its fair share of bottom.
Yeah,
I mean, Yeah, but I mean, Huntsville and the bottom half of the WCHA, and at least the last couple of years, the WCHA was pretty bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never, just hit that record aside, I've never seen a game with 5 shots total for a team. I mean, that is insane. So that was a result that stuck out to me this weekend. I did also watch,
and not only that, but they were 0 for 6 on the power play.
Yeah.
So they had 5 shots on goal and 6 power play opportunities, which again,
it's tough to do.
I don't understand.
Tough to do. And then I also did watch basically the last half of the Madison Square Garden game against Cornell and Boston University. A decent game. Again, BU's not very good, and Cornell looks like pretty decent, especially coming off of a year where they took the year off last year. It's kind of a question mark with about the 10 teams or so, all the Ivies, and then you had a handful of others, RPI, Union, a couple of others that did not play last year. It was kind of a question as how well are these teams going to come back, and they lost some of those guys transferring and whatnot. But Cornell looks like they're pretty legit. I was laughing because the game was weird. It was on ESPN Plus, which is they have a contract through the ECAC schools, and Cornell was wearing white. Believe they were technically the home team, got the last shift or last change, but yet it was 2 BU guys were doing the game, announcing the game. And these guys were from New England, very obviously from New England. Thick Boston accents. It's like I'm watching the game for like 2 or 3 minutes. It's like, why am I hungry for clam chowder?
The red or the white?
It was, it was entertaining in that regard. Plus, they were kind of salty because BU was losing the game, so that was kind of fun to.
They've lost all year,
and it seems like they've been doing this Madison Square Garden game once a year. I think Cornell's in it every year. I think BU's been in it more often than not, but not every year. I think they've played some other opponents in the game. But it seemed like a very, very good crowd. I mean, not a sellout or anything, but it seemed like a pretty good atmosphere for a midseason game between the two teams. So I enjoyed watching that one. And then I did also text you one more. I did text you that we kind of called it, that Long Island notched probably their biggest win in school history.
Biggest win in school history there against Miami.
Which is notable because it was a win, period. They haven't had many of those. But I'd say that I watched most of the Saturday game especially. A fair amount of the Friday game too. And it was no fluke that they beat them on Friday. Outchanced them all weekend, even Saturday. It was about 2-1 shot advantage for Long Island. Although Miami was able to pull out the win on Saturday. But geez, come on, Miami. Like, don't be dragging our conference down here with these terrible losses against terrible teams. Miami, get it together.
And Miami, who just lost the defenseman too, as he bolted kind of at a weird time. Every once in a while, like mid-season, we'll have, some kind of person, drop out or whatnot. But to do it in November is quite an interesting tactic.
And probably not a good sign for Miami going forward if they're losing guys that are just being like, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. I'll spend my time in somewhere in Tennessee playing for the ECHL or wherever he went. And their goalie too, the preseason goalie of the year, which that's not looking so hot of a prediction. Although I don't think he's their number one problem, obviously, but he got hurt on Friday, so they had to win with their backup on Saturday. And yeah, it's still amazing the first weekend or first week of the year in the first season of the NCHC, the number one team in college hockey, according to the USCHO poll, according to the unassailable voters at USCHO, the number one team in the country was Miami. And to see how far that program has gone down, it's sad, really.
They were the number one team. When were they the number one team?
They would have been
the conference.
They would have been the preseason number one team in 2013, the first year of the NCHC, and then and that's. I mean, they had one year where the second year of the NCHC where they made the tournament. They won the conference tournament and then they made the tournament. Other than that, it's been 7th and 8th place in every single year. New coach, not so new. I think he's in his 3rd year, but Blasey is fired and this Bergeron doesn't seem to be turning around anytime soon either. So things don't look so hot in Oxford.
Yeah. Now that's a series we should sweep, but we'll get to that one. Yeah, exactly. So, one question I want to ask you, and I'll give you a little bit of time because I'll talk about my answer, and that would be, what would be your best worst superpower that you could have? Like if you had one superpower, but it would be really great, but it wouldn't be like, something useful, like in a grand scheme of things, like not like teleportation or flying or whatnot, kind of what superpower would you have? And I thought about that for a while, and I decided that mine would be the ability to find stuff. Like, if I could never lose a thing, if I could have that superpower, absolutely love it. Like, I had to tear apart my house for 2 days straight looking for my daughter's stuffed bunny. And to see the look in her eye, a 4-year-old's eye, wondering where her stuffed animal was, and you don't have an answer. Oh, it was heart-wrenching. It broke me. She had the big eyes. She was so sad. Finally found it, shoved between 2 books in the bookcase. Don't know how it got there. But if I could, and I could use that like for golf, if I slice it into the woods. Betting is illegal at Bushward, sir, and I never slice. And I could always find my golf ball. I would love it. That'd be wonderful. So I think that would be my pick. My other runner-up pick would never have to wait at a red light. That would be my other superpower, is I could control the traffic lights. That would be awesome. So
yeah, that's not bad. The finding things is a good one, because I think that like finding my keys, car keys. It's like I when I struggle to do it, it's like I'm playing the keys game again. Where I'm like, where are my keys? I go to the jeans pocket. A lot of times pocket. A lot of times they're like on my table or something right in front of my face. That's a good one. I like the what about like they got like the electronic walkways in the airports.
Mm-hmm.
If there's like an ability to do that just in general. Sort of like a escalator feet,
just a
thing. I'm mostly saying that because I got a bum knee right now and I'm kind of hobbling around. So that maybe just is a temporary, like, boy, it'd be nice to just glide wherever I go. I think that's a good, for the very specific question here. I mean, you're runner up of. Maybe I can be a pro golfer. Seems to be a little bit of a cheat. I mean, not a pro golfer, but I could find my golf ball. Okay. I thought that it was mostly like, just make me into a PGA Tour pro.
No. I mean, yes, I would love that, but I think that's outside of the scope of
So it was still sort of a piggyback on the finding things.
Yes. Yeah. If I could never lose a golf ball, would be great.
Gotcha.
Because I could hit it and be like, oh, I know where it is.
Well, yeah, I'll go with escalator movements. Off again, you sprung it on me here the last minute. So if I come up with a better one, I will text you immediately.
Everybody, I want everybody to tweet me at More Clappers. Tweet me your answer. Let me know. And then if you think of a better one, we can come back, revisit. Maybe I'll read some answers. If anybody's made it this far into the podcast, I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, just the best, worst superpower.
I like it. We'll vote on the best one next week.
Exactly. I like finding things. So. Well, that about does her. So thank you so much for listening. And until next time, go Huskies. Woo!